Good morning, folks, and welcome to Corvette Talk with Scags. You know, from the very beginning, people were trying to turn the Corvette into something else. If you think about it, it makes sense because the vehicles that were being turned out by American automakers in the late 40s and early 50s, they were really just boxy, stodgy people movers. And then all of a sudden, there was the Corvette. And every gearhead, every engineer, every designer, even every bean counter, when they looked at the Corvette, what they saw was potential. And so it turns out that that something else turned out to be racing. And with racing, in this case, with the Corvette, it definitely improved the breed. So let's jump into our video today and let's see how the evolution of the Corvette as a race car turned this thing into something super special and definitely improved the breed. So where we start? Well, we start from the very beginning because in 1953, the Corvette was barely on the showroom floor when newly minted Corvette chief engineer Zora Arkus-Duntov decided to get a hold of, not even in production yet, a brand new 265 V8 Chevrolet engine. He bored it out to 307 cubic inches. He put his own Duntov cam and heads on there, and he went racing. And what did he accomplish? Zora Arkus-Duntov managed 163 miles an hour in the EX87. That was really the beginning of the Corvette as a race car. Everyone realized the potential that the Corvette had to go racing. And as far as selling Corvettes were concerned, the belief was that if you won on Sunday, you would sell on Monday. So really, everyone was behind the Corvette as a race car. Moving on from there, now there was a racing ban in 1957 which made turning the Corvette into a race car a little difficult. There was a terrible accident at Le Mans that year, and drivers as well as spectators were killed. And no one wanted their product to be associated with racing at the time. So we're going to see how Chevrolet managed to get creative in getting their parts into the hands of race cars before the ban was finally lifted about a decade later. So moving on from there, we go to, we're doing this in chronological order, so you'll see the evolution, is the SR2. There were two SR2s made, and the SR2 was actually made for Harley Earl's son, Jerry, who was a racer, and his preference was Ferraris and and Healey's and Jaguars, and this rubbed Harley Earl the wrong way. And they produced this car for Jerry. This car was produced to race in the 12 Hours of Sebring, where it did relatively respectfully. This car actually became, there was two of them made, it became the Sebring SS, which became the Stingray, which became the 1963 Corvette. So we're definitely going to see some evolution here. There's some more pictures of the other SR2. Very cool. Okay, from there we go to the Sebring SS, a beautiful car. Here's more clay molds. Here's an early version of a wind tunnel test. This one was built to compete in the 12 Hours of Sebring endurance race. So it had a gigantic fuel tank and such. I'm going to turn some pages here so you can see some more pictures. You get a really idea about how advanced this car was with a beautiful tube frame a la Maserati birdcage. You see that it's got a quick change rear end with a DD on rear axle, inboard brakes, all the highest tech coilover suspension, really all the highest tech stuff you can get went into the Sebring SS. So as you can see, Chevrolet was really throwing all its weight and its money behind the Sebring SS. It was made of magnesium, racing style suspension, and yes, an early version of anti-lock brakes. Here is Zora Arkus-Duntov sitting behind the wheel. Some of the races required a canopy top, so there's kind of a wonky looking canopy top. Here it is racing in Sebring. Some beautiful color pictures of the Sebring SS. It really only raced once, and then it was kind of shelled. And this was the actual car that still exists in the Heritage Collection. And this car, the Mule they called it, that one turned into the Stingray. The Stingray is a gorgeous car. This one still exists also. Harley Earl has plenty of pictures of Harley Earl driving this thing. Bill Mitchell driving this thing. So the Stingray actually was successful. It won the 1960 class championship with the Flying Dentist, Dr. Dick Thompson, and the design became the 1963 Corvette, as you're going to see here. If I turn a couple of pages, there's the man right there, Bill Mitchell. Here's Bill Mitchell with Phil Hill. I guess Bill Mitchell's trying to convince Phil Hill to race this thing. Here it is in red. Here's one of Bill's strange concept vehicles. And as you can see here, you can see how the Stingray developed into the 1963 Corvette. Okay, moving on from there. This is all some really interesting stuff, huh? Now, what you won't find in today's video are Grand Sports and or L88s. Those are very significant racing cars, and they warrant their own video. Next week, I'm going to do L88s. So moving on from there, we get to the very first Z06. Before the Grand Sport, there was the Z06. And like I was talking about with the racing band, the Z06, you really had to get creative. You had to order yourself a Z06, and then you had to deck it out into a race car. So I have some stuff underlined here. Let me see if my eyes can read it. As early as 1956, Chevy offered options for racing parts hidden in an order form for the buyer if he was diligent and perceptive, okay? With the 1963 model year, the option was complete. It was called the Z06. This was an $1,800 package and included everything from improved cooling, suspension, brakes, to a stronger engine and a stronger drivetrain. So some of this stuff was considered a Copo. If you're into cars, you've heard of Copo Camaros and Copo Chevelles. Well, there were Copo Corvettes as well. Copo stood for a Central Office Production Order. And what it meant really was that you had to know someone on the inside to get some of these racing parts. Some of them were called a trunk option. What the trunk option was say you would go to your dealership, you would order a Z06, but if you really wanted to take the thing racing, you'd have to get the trunk option. And what the trunk option was in the little trunk there was headers, there was a set of magnesium wheels. Don't ask me how they got all this stuff in there. There was a Harrison aluminum radiator, there were headlight covers, there was all sorts of stuff in the trunk package. But this was one way that Chevrolet was able to get around the racing ban and still supply parts to privateers who wanted to go racing. Okay, no radio, no heater, no clock, no air conditioner, and a 36-gallon fuel tank. That's what you got for your $1,800 when you ordered a Z06. Beautiful picture there. Fuel injected 327 motor, putting out 360 horsepower, 400 horsepower, whatever it might be. Gorgeous car. I could have done this one under $1 million Corvettes as well, since this one sold for $1.5 million a few years back. Very cool. So pre-Grand Sport, there was a Z06. Wow, take a look at these babies. I know I probably bombed John Greenwood with that Greenwood station wagon, but some of his racers were the real deal. Not only were they attractive, but boy, did they win. And the Spirit of Le Mans won Le Mans in 1976. That says a lot right there. Not just a class win, but it won the race outright. So Greenwood had Protofab build the extensively modified steel tube frames and mount the Corvette suspension, engines, and drivetrains. So there it is. Wild looking car. I'm actually going to do a special on the Greenwood Corvettes as well. Look at this cross ram intake manifold. Holy cow. Is that a thing of beauty or what? So starting with an all aluminum ZL1 L88 engine, Greenwood worked his magic, and rumors report that he and Dick Smothers had better than 850 horsepower available. Okay, so that's no joke. That's a good way to win. That's a good way to win Le Mans. Okay, moving on from there. Sticking with the evolution here. From there, we get to the 1986 GTP. I'm dipping into my priceless collection of vintage motorsports magazines. Well, priceless to me. And there's always some great, interesting stuff in there. And here's the 1986 Corvette GTP. Check this thing out. It was a turbocharged, hold your ears, folks. It was a turbocharged V6. Yes, all kinds of weird motors went into the Corvette over the years. 1,000 horsepower. Hendricks Motorsports, any of you gearheads out there, I'm sure you know who Rick Hendricks is. Well, Hendricks worked his magic with these. 2 of them were built. They're both in existence, and they're both in the Hendricks Museum. So that goes to show how significant these things were. Take a look at some of these pictures. Gorgeous car. Very competitive car. The twin turbocharged V6 sounded like a helicopter coming down the track. That whirring, zinging, beautiful noise to the ears. Beautiful in-period picture. Cockpit. So this was a purpose-built racer. Chevrolet backed Hendricks with a little financing. Beautiful. Moving on from there, we go to the 1988 Mobil 1. Let's check this baby out. Boom. This was also known as the Paul Newman race car. This is what Paul Newman was bombing around with in the later parts of his racing career. Beautiful purpose-built race car. You see it there. twin fuel tanks, all kinds of modern stuff in this thing in 88. Backed by Mobil 1. Gorgeous car. Almost looks like a toy engine there. Well, that toy engine produced some serious horsepower. Chevy backed these things a little bit. A little money coming from the till there. So that's the Mobil 1 Trans Am Racer. Okay, and we're going to finish up with the 1990 RG9. We talked about the Corvette Challenge Series, which was 88 and 89. Very interesting. For exactly 1 week, Chevrolet offered racers in the know who intended to run in the World Challenge the opportunity to buy what is called an RG9 Corvette. So for 1 week, you got the opportunity to buy one of these. Only 23 RG9 Corvettes were built, and they were driven by Andy Pilgrim. We all know who Andy Pilgrim is. Pilgrim later went on to drive for the factory Corvette racing team. We all know about Andy Pilgrim and his racing school, and his got a Corvette named after him. The RG9 came about because in 1988, Cole, this one's for you because you mentioned this in one of your comments to me. Yes, the Corvette was kicked out of the SCCA for the 88 and 89 season. It was too competitive, no matter how they dummied down this thing. So Chevrolet and General Motors went out and created the Corvette Challenge Series for 88 and 89. Those cars are very collectible and they're very cool. Well, for 1990, they were allowed back in, and what became of it was the RG9 factory-backed race car. So folks, there you have it. The evolution of the Corvette as a race car. Racing definitely improves the breed, and it certainly improved sales for the Corvette. Everyone wanted in on the action. The Corvette became a great race car. As you know, the C5R race cars, I stopped before the C5R in the late 90s and early 2000s because by that point they had 100% factory backing, and those cars are dominant as well as they are all the way up to today. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the Corvette as the evolution of the Corvette as a race car. And next week we're going to do a video on L88s talking about Corvettes as a race car. Folks, thank you so much for watching Corvette Talk with Scags. Enjoy your weekend, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Thank you again.